Hey everybody, Bob and Chris here. Hey, happy New Year! This is our first quick pick, Chris.
That's
For the
exactly right. We took a little break.
yeah, we had a little break during the holidays. Not the bad guys though, which we'll kind of touch on that.
That's
We'll
yeah,
be
that's
touching.
that's that's exactly why we're on today.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to be talking about what's been referred to as Operation PCPcat.
It's hard to
So
say.
yeah, well,
Yes. Somebody,
PCP.
yeah.
I was looking at the name going, okay, I'm sure there's a real reason they named it that, but all I could see was PCP and then cat after it. And I'm going, okay, so cats on
Yeah.
drugs, got it.
De
Um,
definitely a musician would see that right away.
yeah, right away. Yeah, but so what we're just gonna talk about it, but what it really centers around, it was a report of a exploitation that involved Node.js and a couple other libraries. But the real meaningful part, because Chris and I were talking about this before we got online, there's nothing like super oddly unique about this particular attack. So it's using vectors that are known vectors in multiple attacks. The thing that makes it interesting and at least quick pick worthy was the scale of what went down.
Scale and
The
speed, right? Scale
Yeah,
and
speed
speed.
and skate, right? Because what this basically did is it really compromised over 59, almost 60,000 servers, and it did that in 48 hours. So, and I know what everybody's going to say. Well, something's not right. That's bullshit. We've never heard of that. Okay, I'm going to drop all the information.
That's right. That's
I'm going to have all those files so where you can go look at them and look at the analysis work and everything. And I'll have this executive summary on,
I mean, like we were talking about before this, we were like,
yeah,
it almost sounds like bullshit purely because we haven't heard about it.
yeah,
Like, I mean, this is not making any kind of news whatsoever.
no,
But I
right.
mean, that amount of time, and this is like the peak rate was at 41,000 a day. So
Yeah.
that's insane. And
Yeah, it
that
was
and it's
accelerating.
global. It's global. Yeah, it's global. This wasn't like they were
No,
all
that's
in one
right.
nice little data center somewhere just picking it apart. I mean, this was spread across the world.
Yeah, and I mean the systems that it affected, the ecosystems, let's put it that way, that were affected. I mean, it was everything from Azure to Docker to Kubernetes, you name it. It touched anywhere where there were servers, either physical or virtual, that were running these Node.js packs. By the way, if you haven't gone and listened to it, Chris and I did one of these quick picks on the npm, the GitHub exploit that wound up affecting the npm libraries and modules. And I'm going to tell you something. I told Chris this. I may be crazy, but the fact that they got into all of that GitHub library and got credentials and got into those code bases and those modules, it doesn't surprise me that right now we're trying to figure out how 59,000 servers could get compromised via the Node.js libraries in 48 hours. I mean, a lot of this, in my opinion, are related as it
Yeah.
relates to all of that stuff being in the wild.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a good, hypothesis or maybe even a theory at this point to say that. I think that whether it was directly or indirectly through just knowledge transfer with some of these guys out there, with the threat actors kind of working together, I would not be surprised at all if it was somewhat connected as well.
Yeah, this actually, by the way, the scale of this actually rises to the level of being one of the most severe credential thefts in recent history, and we have heard about some big ass credential thefts lately. So to put that on scale, 9,128 servers, I think is credential haul in a very long time.
Yeah, and you'll see in this, when we put the documents out there, you'll see, I mean, the estimates range between 300,000 and just sub of 600,000. So they don't even know. I mean, that whenever I see things like that, I mean, maybe somebody does know, they just haven't published it, but
Right.
they probably don't know. I mean, if you take it from a forensics perspective, what is the effort to investigate this size of an attack and try to come up with whatever that exact number is and what the impacted credentials are? I mean, it may be so big that there's not anybody willing to pay for that effort to be done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Chris and I were talking because this, by the way, this wound up ranking a CVSS score of 10.0, by the way. So, I mean, it literally got categorized as the maximum severity critical rating, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about
Yeah,
here.
and it's not easy to get that rating. And I mean, they take
No.
that 10.0 very seriously. So, and the other thing to note about this one is they said that the primary command and control was out of Singapore. And I always find Singapore interesting. I used to spend at least a couple of weeks a year there for a while. And it's a very modern country, and a lot of people wouldn't assume. But I know back in the past when we would be tracing people that lost funds, like as a result of a BEC, those funds get transferred fairly quickly globally. And one of the most difficult countries to pull those funds out of, at least a couple of years ago, I haven't had to deal with it lately, was Singapore. And it's always surprised me with that country because they're, from a cultural perspective, they're like very um, ethical
Yeah,
from a
conservative.
perspective,
Hmm.
conservative. Yeah, their legal system's pretty tight. If you're doing stupid stuff, you're gonna get in trouble, and it's gonna hurt
Yeah,
in more ways than one. And yeah, it's interesting to see that that they leverage some asset or assets primarily based out of Singapore to do this. And the other thing we were talking about is, with the speed of this, and you can comment because I think what you commented before this we got on the air about this is like, I mean, the fact that this was so big and undetected.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. I mean, this again, our conversation went around. Okay, well, why in the hell would we not have heard more about this? But then Chris reminded me that right in the teeth of when this was all going on, we had Venezuela, the national Venezuela event that was just taking all the air out of the room. And this is again something else we discussed. That's the exact time when you need to start paying attention. Not just focus on all of that. I mean, really, as cybersecurity professionals, we need to. That's the kind of distraction which gives opportunity to some of these bad guys. And unfortunately, in this case, it only took 48 damn hours to get this far. I mean, before it was figured out, and that's
I
crazy.
haven't heard anybody whining about this or
No,
criticizing about
no,
this or throwing anybody under the bus about this. I mean, it's another one of these things that's just like from the scale, or people, is it just one of those things where, I mean, we don't know who had these servers, what they were used for. We don't know anything like that. So,
yeah. They do
yeah,
have complete evidence because they were using basically, I think it was Ghost. It was one of
yeah,
the
I think you're right, Ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, they were using Ghost socks to Sox 5, and they were basically what they were doing building proxy encrypted channels, right? Tunneling. They were tunneling back outbound for command and control. The other little part about this, which is not it's been done before, but again, it's the combination of what they did in this case. Every time they compromised a server, they turned that server into an exploitation node on the network as well. That's the reason it was able to go to 59,000 servers in 48 hours, is that they were going exponential, right? They were basically, by the time they get a hold of one, they turned it into a query engine to go try to track down more IP addresses where the vulnerability exists, and then they kind of spread that way. So literally, I mean, again, you have to think about that. 59,000 servers in 48 hours. That is such a short period of time. I don't care if you're pushing a patch out in your Microsoft. That's still a hell of a lot of those servers in a very short period of time. So it takes some operational skills, to first build something like that, but then secondarily be able to field all of that data coming back from all of those servers, because they're basically becoming nodes, scanning nodes for the
Yeah,
world. So
and it would be interesting to find out from the threat actor perspective what the financial outcome of this is, right? So,
yeah,
how much money do they make off what they exfiltrated, as far as credentials and anything else goes? What is that value out there in that world? That'd be interesting if anybody out there wants to
yeah,
comment on that, of what they would think
absolutely.
that value would be. It's tough because again, we don't know the creds to whom to what, but there are a bunch of creds, so maybe somebody out there can kind of give it a good guesstimate of what the heck it is.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I think, again, if you look at, again, this is the research we ran. You guys know how we do this. We get a URL that's got the facts that as they're explained. We put those into all of the 5 different LLM engines. We have them all go search the web for any related articles, pull all that back together, build a threat report based on all that information, and then build an executive summary on top of that. And so when you go look at this, you'll see the executive summary on LinkedIn, but I'll have a link to a Dropbox that has all of the individual LLMs, um, data coming back and put into files, so that you can see that too, to kind of see where the sources are for a lot of this. But several of the sources were kind of showing about what the cost per organization, an estimate of kind of what that was, and the range is between $2 million and 110, depending on how big the organization was. Now, I don't know how much that's based off of what it could find. And we all know not everybody reports these things consistently. So I take that with a grain of salt, but let's just all agree that it took a lot of horsepower to unwind that crap. And it's obviously scale wise, it had to be in the millions of dollars because, that's how much man hours were put into trying to track all that down and unwind it. So again, another one of those things we talked, I don't know, what was it, 2 months ago, Chris, we talked about the GDP of the UK being affected by a
Yeah,
singular attack of Jaguar and Land Rover.
that's right.
One cyber incident lowering a country's GDP. And now here we are. It's not even, I don't think it was 3 months ago. And we're 90 days later or so. And now we're talking about 59,000 servers being hit in 48 hours. I mean, I think we should all be getting the understanding that the scale and the speed of these things are changing dramatically. So we're going to have to figure out how to up our game
Yeah,
on
and
a
I
lot
think
of this.
what the thing about this too, I mean, one could argue that there was these instances that were actually compromised. They were spun up by human beings, probably maybe with some automation in place and stuff of that nature. But now that we're getting into more of this AI world and vibe coding and that type of stuff, I could definitely see the amounts of servers being spun up, and then that in a vulnerable state. They might not have been upon immediate time when they were put into production, but 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later, I mean, no one's taking care of those things for the most part. They're spinning those things up and then continuing to develop on them and not keeping them thing. And so now you're going to have this massive server sprawl, global server sprawl. So these things, I mean, this could start to be just a common number.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. That may
Yeah.
be our new baseline. I mean, we may
Yeah.
be staring down the barrel of what's going to wind up being a new baseline for us. Is that when people are doing this, they're going to be hitting. I think we're going to see it both ways. I had this conversation with a cybersecurity attorney because they were saying, "Well, what do you think is going to affect? How do you think AI is going to affect things from an attack series?" I said, "Look, what's going to happen is they're going to be able to move down market." Because they have so much automation now, instead of worrying about just dealing with companies that are quote big enough to try and get something out of, because the reason it has to be big enough is because they got a lot of overhead to run to make it all work, right? And you need people and you got to keep people quiet. So there's a lot of money and overhead for the bad guys. But when you can use automation and LLMs to do it, which means two people in a room can have the same capabilities an entire team used to take before, what's that going to do? Well, they're going to go down market. They're going to go toward the small businesses now because, first of all, they know they don't have the layers of defense that the enterprises have. That's the first thing. Second thing, they're going to get better margins if they can hit 100 or 200 or 2,000 small businesses for $10,000 to get out of a deal. They're going to be able to make more margin by going down market at some point because the automation is going to allow them to do it. So that's going to
Yeah.
be a scale problem as we kind of go forward.
Yeah, and I was talking with some other individuals earlier today just about data security, and one thing about AI is it's going out and crawling, whether it's internal or whatever, all the data. So it's doing a much better job of inventorying data assets than any tool out there. And that stuff's just getting thrown out everywhere. I mean, companies are not paying attention, and you're right, the smaller companies especially are not paying attention to any of that stuff while those tools are being adopted or used, whether they're being formally or informally adopted by their staff. And so, yeah, it's I don't know, it is like a really bad disease, and it's doing what it's doing, and it's gonna security's trying to catch up.
Yeah, it's the new STD, server transmitted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. It's a good one. Server transmitted disease. Yeah.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
we're talking about. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So we just wanted to, again, we'll put it out there, but we'd love to hear your comments about this
Yeah,
and any
most definitely.
observations that you can make. So please, by all means, comment. And if you see something interesting that we ought to be looking at, by all means, drop that too. But take a look at the research and take a look at the summary, and then just make sure you're familiarize yourself with it, because I can promise you this ain't gonna be the last time we see one of these. It seemed to be pretty easy, and like Chris and I were talking about, there's no rocket science involved in what they were doing. Really, it was harvesting credentials and tokens. That's really the whole premise that they were doing. They just figured out how to do this at speed, at line speed. And I think that's I think we're going to be facing that from now on. So just need to be aware of what's going on. That's what we're trying to do. Keep informed.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for the first of the year. Happy New Year. First quick pick of 2026. And then we'll see you next time.
Yeah, more to come. See ya.
More to come. All right. Bye.